Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with Part 12, The Cults of the Ancient Mysteries, from A History of Secret Societies by Arkon Daraul. Chapter 11, The Cults of the Ancient Mysteries. There was something strange about the classical mysteries, something which attracted people to them, and having attracted them, made their initiates, with few exceptions, permanent devotees. In Egypt, Greece, India, Rome, and a dozen other places and countries, sacred initiations took place in specially prepared sanctuaries. Priests of the mysteries enjoyed the profound respect of the masses, as well as that of kings and counsellors. What were the mysteries? Until relatively recently, and relying upon comparatively scattered fragments such as Apuleius's Golden Ass, historians and religious writers had formed an opinion of them which has been shown to be extremely naive. They knew that at the ceremonies symbolical teaching took place, and hence inferred that the mysteries were a relic of the times when academic knowledge was guarded by the few, and scientific truths, such as Pythagorean theorems, were given only to the elect. They knew too that orgiastic drumming and dancing formed a part of many rituals, and therefore told their readers that this was a degenerate form of religion or a mere excuse for licentiousness. They found that stories of ancient gods and heroes were recited, and were sure that the mysteries constituted little more than an underground survival of prehistoric religion, magic, or tribal initiation. Times have changed. The study of brainwashing and conditioning the mind within the past decade has helped to lay bare the essence of the mysteries, and has answered the riddles which surrounded them. In this process, those who had tried to keep the celebration of the mysteries alive, who had tried to revive them, have been shown up as relying upon the symbolic interpretation alone. And this revelation has been in its own way one of the most startling developments of contemporary religion. Almost anyone, for instance, can get away with telling anyone else that he was an Egyptian priest in a former incarnation, because there is so very little verifiable material available to prove the reverse. But let anyone attempt to celebrate any of the ancient mystery cults' rituals, and unless he has a sound idea of how the human mind works, he is unlikely to escape the criticism of those physiologists who now see in the mysteries an almost open book. Let us return to a sketch of the conventional knowledge about the mysteries. In those of Eleusis, celebrated in Greece, the candidate had to undergo fasting or abstinence from certain foods. There were processions with sacred statues carried from Athens to Eleusis. Those who were to be initiated waited for long periods of time outside the hall in the temple where the rites were to be held. Eventually, a torchbearer led them within the precincts. The ceremonies included a ritualistic meal, one or two dramas, the exhibition of sacred objects, the giving of the word, an address by the hierophant, and oddly enough, closure with the Sanskrit words Kansha Om Paksha. The elements included the clashing of cymbals, tension, and a certain degree of debilitation, eating something, plus conditions which were awe-inspiring, strange. The candidate was in the hands of, and guided by, the priesthood. Other factors were drinking a soporific draught, symbolic sentence of death, whirling around a circle. Initiation ceremonies of secret cults of the mystery type invariably involved tests, sometimes most severe ones. The effect of certain experiences was a carefully worked program of mind training, which is familiar in modern times as that which is employed by certain totalitarian states to condition or reshape the thinking of an individual. This process produces a state in which the mind is pliant enough to have certain ideas implanted, ideas which resist a great deal of counter-influence. This was the secret of the mysteries, this and nothing else. Echoes of such training are to be seen in the rituals of certain secret societies without mystical pretensions, which survive to this day: trials, terror, expectancy, drinking, and the rest. That this fact was known in the past is evidenced by the words of Aristotle, who was exiled because he was said to have revealed something about the mysteries, and he said, "Those who are being initiated do not so much learn anything as experience certain emotions and are thrown into a special state of mind." What was this special state of mind? It was a plasticity in order that the conditioning might take permanent root. The psychologist William Sargant, the greatest authority on this subject, says in his classic Battle for the Mind, "It seems therefore that there are common final paths which all individual animals, though initial temperamental responses to imposed stresses vary greatly, must finally take if only stresses are continued long enough. This is probably the same in human beings. If so, it may help to explain why excitatory drumming, dancing, and continued bodily movement are so much used in such a number of primitive religious groups. The efforts and excitement of keeping the dance in progress for many hours on end should wear down, and if need be, finally subdue even the strongest and most stubborn temperament, such as might be able to survive frightening and exciting talk alone for days or weeks. Ciphers used by secret societies. Dr. Sargent notes that Chinese experiments in mass excitation, breaking down and reconditioning are based on the same physiological principle as religious conversion, and also group and individual psychotherapy treatments. These include the application of tension, fear, anxiety, conflict, to the point where the subjects are uncertain. In this state, suggestibility is increased, and the old pattern of behavior is disrupted. The fact that the devotees of the mysteries were thoroughly conditioned to them and felt that they were important in their lives is seen in much historical evidence. Even in the 4th century of the Christian era, the Greeks were insisting that they would consider life unbearable if they were not allowed to celebrate those most sacred mysteries which unite the human race. The work of those who have pointed out the function of the mysteries as mind training and conditioning has, of course, evoked no answer from those who still think that the rituals are mere symbolic representations of knowledge or of facts. But it is interesting to note that the ecstasy which is produced by excitatory methods and is followed by manipulation of the mind is still sought by members of many secret cults who are aware of the scientific explanation. Their reaction is that the experience may well be induced by physical methods, but in spite of that, it is nothing less than actual spiritual communion with a supernatural power. This is the point at which scientists and mystics cannot agree. The mystic feels sure that he has experienced something sublime. The scientist tells him that it is an illusion. He will not believe it. The situation reminds one of the time when someone produced the soul of a departed relative to tell a spiritualist that there was no life after death. Although this is alleged to have happened in Ireland, one can visualize it taking place easily enough in the mutually heated atmosphere of scientist versus mystic anywhere. The orgiastic side of the mysteries, too, has a place in the sphere of psychology. The catharsis, cleansing of the mind, which the secret cult of the Qatari experienced after ecstasy, is paralleled by the modern therapist's procedure in bringing his patient to a state of excitement and collapse before implanting what he considers more suitable ideas in his mind. Christianity was not behind in its use of the mystery system for initiates. It was not until AD 692 that every believer was ordered to be admitted to the worship of the Christians, following the period when it was thought advisable to celebrate certain parts of worship in secret. Traces of this survive in such customs as that of the Greek Orthodox Church, where the priest celebrates divine worship behind a curtain, which is only taken away during the elevation of the host, since at that moment the worshippers prostrate themselves and are not supposed to see the Holy Sacrament. The reason given for the secrecy of the practice of the Christian cult gives a clue in explaining that the celebrant must be prepared by expectation. St. Augustine laid down that secrecy was essential because the mysteries of Christianity were incomprehensible to human intellect and should not be derided by the uninitiated. Secondly, because this secrecy produced greater veneration for the rites. Thirdly, that the holy curiosity of those to be initiated into the experience of Christianity should be increased in order that they might attain to a perfect knowledge of the faith. St. Basil, De Spiritu Sancto, tells how the fathers of the Church were well instructed to preserve the veneration of the mysteries in silence. For how could it be proper publicly to proclaim in writing the doctrine of those things which no unbaptized person may so much as look upon? The origin of mystery ceremonies does seem to be India, or at least the place and time when the Brahmin priesthood started its initiations. The ceremonies were based upon the Hindu myths, but the procedure followed in training the aspirant is strikingly similar in Egypt, and Egypt profoundly influenced Greece. Prayer, fasting, and study were the first requirements when the Indian candidate prepared himself for the trials which were before him, for the actual sight of the great gods, and for the final word teaching which would be implanted in his mind when it had become sufficiently prepared to receive it. If the weather was cold, he would have to sit in the snow or rain, naked. In the torrid heat, he sat in the full blaze of the sun with 4 fires built around him to give additional heat. This was the first part of the undertaking, while he repeated prayers and repetitions which included the invocation for his complete conversion. This latter concentration upon the desires of the candidate is applied in more than one of the mysteries. Coupled with the word, which is given during the ceremonies, it means that the power of suggestion is being applied continuously and should penetrate into the mind at every moment when it is able to receive it. This period of dedication was succeeded by one in which he visited the underground cave of initiation. Passing through a tunnel of complete darkness, he emerged into the cavern, where 3 priests, dressed as gods, awaited him in resplendent and intimidating array. After being addressed and partaking in the oration of prayers, he walked rapidly around the temple several times, and was then carried through several subterranean and unlit caves. During this time there were wails and shouts from every side, while illuminated spectres and other horrors abounded. At the end of this terrible experience, the aspirant came to 2 doors which, when thrown open to the sound of the sacred conch trumpet, revealed a scene of brilliance and glory. This hall was full of every delight in the form of pictures, music, and perfume. He walked to an altar in the room where he was again harangued, and presented with his 7-fold cord, which marked his passing through the initiation. If we compare these proceedings with those which were said to be carried out among the Egyptians, the parallelism is startling. The candidate was taken to a well, which he had to descend until he came to a tunnel. Torch in hand, he passed through a door, which closed with a resounding noise. He was met by frightful figures, which offered him a last chance of going back. Now he passed through a fire, swam through a dangerous underground stream. As soon as he reached a door and touched a ring to open it, a blast of air blew out the lamp which gave the only available light. A machine swung him over a bottomless pit. Just as he was on the point of exhaustion, an ivory door opened, and he found himself on the threshold of the resplendent temple of Isis. Here the priests received him into their company. After this series of tests, he had to undergo fasting and what would nowadays be called indoctrination, before he could be considered completely initiated into even the 1st degree. The foregoing experiences were followed by the higher degrees, those of Serapis and Osiris. It is needless to outline the beliefs and methods used in the Chinese, Japanese, South American and other mysteries, because while the legends which are inculcated vary, the training system hardly does so at all. The real mystery of the mysteries is how and when man first discovered the use of certain procedures to condition other men, and whether the discovery was instantaneous or gradual or simultaneous or at different times and places. But one cannot date doctrines as one can archaeological finds by radioactive carbon. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.